We've made it to the final 2 weeks of the regular season. We obviously have chaos, drama, and excitement in December, followed up with a bowl game. Nebraska's going to play in something that's going to be interesting against a pretty decent team. Hopefully, a team who doesn't have too many opt outs, so we can see what Nebraska looks like against some good competition out of conference now that they've gone through an entire season to get better. Today, we're here to talk about a pretty big game, though. We're here to talk about Penn State, a team who started the season ranked number one nationally, who had one of the most loaded rosters in the entire country, if not the most loaded, with a bunch of guys who came back off the national title contending team, obviously lost in the playoff last year, but is going to put Nebraska in some funny positions on Saturday because they've got a fantastic run game. They have some really good linemen on both sides of the ball, a stellar defense, an insane defensive coordinator, and I'm just excited to watch what Nebraska can do against a team who is arguably the most talent that they have faced this entire season. I don't know what's going to happen. So I wanted to consult my friend Sam, who you guys obviously watch and appreciate as much as I do. So today we've got him to talk about the Penn State Nebraska game, and we'll see what his prediction is. I'll give you some of my thoughts, and we'll go from there. But with all that said, Sam, welcome to the stream. How you been the last month? I haven't talked to you in a bit.
It's been very busy, but it has been so good and rewarding to cover all the games and watch all the games and just have a blast while doing so.
It's been busy
Thanks for
because
having me on.
there's been so many coaching things going on, so a lot of drama there. Then you've got player injuries on all these teams. Now you've got new guys popping in. Penn State specifically has a new quarterback, right? And there are tons of
Yeah.
teams dealing with different issues. So I know you have a lot to cover. For me, it's been riding the wave of this season as a Nebraska fan. The expectations were sky high to start. And there was a bit of a letdown with that Michigan loss. They bounced back pretty strong. Then a second letdown with the Minnesota loss. Really quick question, just because I have debates with other Nebraska fans about this. Would you agree with me on the fact that Minnesota is not a very good Big Ten team, and the few wins they do have come against other not very good Big Ten teams, and Nebraska absolutely should not have lost that one on the road, even though it was on the road?
Minnesota sucks, so I
Okay,
absolutely
thank
agree
you.
with you.
Thank you. That was the main point, because I hear people say, no, Minnesota's actually a lot better than da da da. Look at their record. I'm like, yeah, you guys have not been watching Minnesota football. They cannot tackle. They not run the ball well. They actually don't do anything well. And them beating Nebraska the way they did was just embarrassing. Okay, thank you for doubling down on that with me. My next question for you is going to be, what's your outlook on what's going on in the Big Ten? Obviously, there are some simple paths for two teams to get into the Big Ten championship game, but with a little bit of chaos, as in one or two losses here or there, it could shake up, right? So, what do you think about Michigan? What do you think about Oregon, USC? What's the outlook right now, and what's your prediction for how this is going to shake up for specifically the Big Ten championship and then the college football playoff?
So for the Big Ten championship, it comes down to Indiana, Ohio State, USC, and Oregon. Michigan would have a lot go their way to get into Indy, even if they beat Ohio State, because their Big Ten opponents combined wins and losses, which is how you get a winner out of a three-way tie, is by going through that,
Yeah.
is so low, is so bad because their schedule's been so easy that if they beat Ohio State and there's a three-way tie between them, the Buckeyes, and the winner of USC Oregon, the winner of USC Oregon goes to Indy. So Michigan needs a lot to go right to go to Indy, and I think that's a good thing for them because out of all the five teams that can go to Indy, they have the least amount of upside. And I don't think they could put together two really great performances against Ohio State and then whoever they would play, most likely Indiana, in the Big Ten championship game. For the college football playoff, Ohio State and Indiana are locks. If Michigan beats Ohio State, I know they're ranked low, but with how much chaos has happened this year and how everyone, for the most part, views Ohio State as the best team, I think with that caliber of win, they would get in.
Agreed.
I think that Oregon, as long as they win one of the next two, is in. I believe USC obviously has to win out. And the Oregon USC game, I've made several videos on it on my channel because it's really fascinating in the sense that USC is a top 10 power rated team, and when healthy, they play like it. Oregon's unanimously top 4 in power ratings. And I think depending on how this game goes, it could tell you a lot about which one of the like 3, 4, or 5 Big Ten, college football playoff contenders, like can they win it all? How far can they go? Because I think we know Indiana and Ohio State can, but if Oregon sort of steamrolls USC the way I think they might, they'll be that third team that maybe can win it all from the Big Ten. And if USC, if they shock me and win, with how much respect I and others have for Oregon, maybe they're in that conversation of if everything goes right for them, they can make a run.
It's crazy how many teams in the Big Ten we're talking about as being legitimate playoff contenders, not just first round and then an exit. Like teams who could actually make a run and beat others from the SEC, like
Yes.
OU and Alabama, Georgia, whoever else. So, yeah, it's an odd season for the Big Ten because you have so much disparity between the top and the bottom, which I guess it's always been like that. But now that you have so many teams and so many dominant teams, it's like, wow, there's a lot going on at the very end of the season. Interestingly enough, Penn State fell out of that. And one thought on Penn State that I initially had was they are more physically imposing than Nebraska is up front, right? They have a better run game. They have two, NFL running backs to say the least. These are two of the best running backs in the country. They've been awarded nationally multiple years. They've both been starting at least 2 years there. Nebraska, in theory, doesn't match up well against their run game because we've watched Nebraska get gashed against good run teams. But I think there's something to say for them playing with a backup quarterback, and a quarterback who I'd argue is on the same tier as TJ. I don't think Gronkmeyer's any better than TJ Latif at this point, watching him play. And I think with that, Nebraska could be in for some opportunistic moments, turnovers, forcing situations, and that could make them a little bit more competitive. So you've been watching Penn State, I have too. What are your thoughts on how they match up with Nebraska initially?
I have kind of a Walmart feeling of what I had preseason, where I remember coming on your show preseason and saying that was the one game Nebraska just wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
Like location, matchup, caliber of team. Penn State's far from that team that I thought they would be in just every way, even in
Yeah.
their strengths. So, unlike preseason, I think Nebraska totally has a shot to win this thing. I still think that
really quick, they talk
Yeah.
about the home field advantage for Penn State, right? And people
Yep.
still talk about that. They're like, oh, there's going to be this advantage for Penn State because they're at home, blah, blah, blah. Look at all of that green, okay, that availability. That's how many tickets are left. We're 2 days before the game. That stadium, people say, oh, this is going to be like a tough environment. It's going to be loud. I totally disagree. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near capacity. It could be their lowest attended game of this entire season. Students are off, so the student section will not be full. People aren't motivated. This is in most people's head, this is an average Nebraska team in a game that Penn State's supposed to win. So you've got to be a really diehard Penn State fan to go out there in the cold and sit through this at night. And you got to be a really diehard Nebraska fan to make the trip. I mean, look at these tickets, $9, and they're not getting scooped up. That says a lot. This will not be a crazy environment. I think people need to get that clear. I think there are many stadiums Nebraska's played in that were more imposing. Like even Maryland might have been louder than what Penn State's going to be. And that says something. Minnesota absolutely was a tougher place to play this year than Penn State was. Anyway, get back to what you were saying. I just wanted to make sure people are aware that this is not going to be the tough environment that it's ever been.
Yeah, it's not going to be whiteout caliber tough. Two things I'll
Okay,
say
wait.
about that.
It's not going to be Penn State standard home game at 10 a.m. caliber tough. It's not going to be. It's going to be compared. Okay, Rutgers at its peak would make this look silly. That's how I see it.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but then again, I'd
Rutgers
have to
at its
see,
peak
really.
on a Friday or Saturday night blackout is much more imposing than this is going to be Saturday. I promise you. There's no one. There's no one at the game. I mean, we'll see if the tickets get scooped up. I don't think this will be more than like 65,000 fans. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I think it'll be maybe not quite the Indiana game, but similar in the sense that you do see a lot of the opposing fans in the stands. There was a lot of
Indiana game was their
crimson.
Super Bowl, so there was reason for people to show up for that. That was a big game. It was exciting. Indiana fans who wanted to go to Penn State because it's still a meaningful game for them. There was a lot to be said for that Indiana game. This is essentially meaningless for Penn State. They're going to make a bowl game as long as they win this game. because they're going to beat Rutgers. So that's the one thing they can get excited about. But outside of that, I just don't think that the excitement and the buildup among the fan base is there, and that makes this a much easier task at hand than it was a few months ago. Anyway, sorry to interject as much as I did.
You're good.
Continue on.
You're great. As for the matchup, I think that for in terms of talent, in terms of size, in terms of depth, at a lot of different positions, though not all of them, you probably go with Penn State here on the surface. I mean, you look at this isn't how teams win games, but when you look at like team talent composite from 247 Sports, Penn State has a top 10 talent roster of players, many of whom will be going to the NFL. Nebraska's is 20th, with not as many NFL players.
Yeah.
And I mean, Drew Aller's hurt, obviously, but unfortunately, along with him, so is Dylan Raiola. It sucks that both of them are out for the season. At least Raiola can.
I would argue that Nebraska would fare better against him than they will against Grunkmeyer, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that was a really tragic injury. He did not fit Kotelnicki's offense at all, and Grunkmeyer doesn't necessarily either. And I liked the point that you brought up about the quarterbacks, where I don't know which is better. I think this game will tell us something about that. I will say Nebraska's receivers are certainly better, and their secondary is certainly better. Penn State's passing defense is, on paper, really good, but it's a very overvalued unit. And Nebraska's, because they've now played some really good passing offenses, is, I think, known through a multiple game sample size to be legit. Where Penn State has the edge is the interior, it's the run defense, it's the rush offense. Their special teams unit is one of the fewest that's actually ahead of Nebraska's in ESPN's efficiency, and Nebraska has the edge on the outside and having the bye week.
It's fair. I like it. There's a comment here, and I'd like you to comment on this, from High Mountain Guy. This follows up with something you just talked about in Grunkmeyer. He said, he looked good as shit against Indiana. Not sure why that QB gets no respect. So when Indiana played Penn State, his stat line, I'm pulling it up right now for you, 22 of 31, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And he did look good. And he fumbled once, didn't lose the ball, but he did fumble. Did he run it? Didn't really run it. He had some good throws. But again, that was Penn State's Super Bowl. They played lights out that day. They should have won that game. And what are your thoughts, I mean, on this comment, just in general?
He also played well against Ohio State, all things considered.
Yeah.
He made some nice throws there. He was able to pick apart their zone on like a drive or two. Then, of course, they made adjustments and they got behind. His play calling is pretty inconsistent, but with the circumstances he has, he plays really well.
Yeah. But he's not a quarterback who's going to light it up. He's not an electric runner. He doesn't have a crazy arm. He's just kind of your average game manager quarterback at this point. That's how he's looked to me. And again, he did look good against Indiana. But outside of that, he's looked kind of like your average guy. So I've liked how TJ performs, and I like TJ's upside more than I like his upside. I would rather have TJ right now than I would him. If I was betting strictly on quarterback, I'd take Nebraska here. One more comment. Dave, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for the 1917. Thank you for inviting me to your Christmas party. 4 of 4 on field goals. We have no problem driving the ball, but we don't punch it in. We get a special teams touchdown, though. Penn State, 1 of 2 on field goals, plus 2 rushing TDs. Nebraska plays with a lead most of the night. Take the under. What's the under? The under is 44.5, man. I think it's going to be one of those lower scoring games. So I like that under. I hope Nebraska can go 4 of 4 in field goals, but I'm not sold. Oh, I'm hiding comments. Hold on. Let me bring the chat up on top so that it's not getting covered. I just noticed that, Sam. There we go. Now it's on top. Now it's on top. Anyway, Nebraska's been inconsistent in the field goal department. It feels like if they've got to kick 3, they're going to make 2. If they got to kick 4, they're going to make 2, maybe 3 of them. I'm not, like, as much as I'm sold on Nebraska special teams, it's not the field goal unit I'm as sold on as it is their return game, their coverage game. Their punt coverage is the best that we've seen in years. Every time I see them punt it, I know for a fact that returner's not getting it back. Like, he's not going to bring it back even 5 yards. Most of the time he gets tackled right away or he fair catches it. So Nebraska special teams is definitely going to be a force. I just don't know that Nebraska's field goal unit is going to drain 4 for 4. I will say, however, in the 2013 game, Nebraska won in overtime. I was at that game. It was a cold night. There were 107,000 people there. I remember people were in the bathroom trying to warm up. Nebraska ended up kicking a walk-off field goal. I think it was 2012, 2013, whatever it was. They kicked a walk-off field goal in OT, and it was an amazing experience. So if Nebraska is going to win in field goal fashion, they have done it at Penn State before. One other thing to say about Penn State, I'm going to pull this up and minimize that, go screen share again. You look at the history. Since 2011, since Nebraska joined the Big Ten, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. In Happy Valley, they're 2 and 1. So they've had success going to Penn State and finding ways to win. They matched up well with Penn State in 2020 when Will Levis was the quarterback. They beat them at home with a backup quarterback. I mean, it was Luke, and he was the starting quarterback at the time, but he was off the bench for Adrian Martinez. And it seems like one of those teams where Nebraska just knows how to beat them. And I don't know why that is. And hopefully we get some sort of similar energy. So Dave, I'm riding with you. I hope you're right. I really do like Nebraska to play close. But Sam, going back to your analysis and your thoughts, Nebraska struggles the most against running quarterbacks. Grunkmeyer's not going to run. Penn State struggles against running quarterbacks. Nebraska, with a bye week to prepare, knows that about Penn State. I think there's going to be opportunity for Nebraska to make some plays with their running quarterback. Look at here. Here's another another stat for you. Running quarterbacks they have faced. UCLA, Nico. They lost outright. What'd Nico do to him? I'm pretty sure Nico
had like over 150
crazy.
rushing yards, I think.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember watching it. I was mad because I had a Penn State money line in the parlay. Okay, Nico had 128 rush yards that day, 16 carries. They could not stop him. Then Penn State played Michigan State.
Iowa.
Or they played Iowa, sorry, and that was Gronowski. What'd he do?
He had over 10 yards per carry.
130 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, had one for 67. Couldn't contain him either. So Nebraska with the bye week, knowing that they need to find ways to create some matchup advantages, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape with TJ, and this could be the one advantage to actually rock in with your backup quarterback while Dylan Raiola is out.
I completely agree with that. That was something that I mentioned where Penn State has been good at getting pressure on the quarterback, but they really struggle with improvised runs and scrambles or designed runs. It's just quarterback run on top of their run defense. It's too much for them to stop.
Yeah, and I think Nebraska's receivers are so talented that even if they are going to throw it shallow all game and they're not going to give TJ that chance to make crazy decisions downfield and throw it deeper, the receivers are explosive enough to get upfield and at least keep Nebraska's drives alive, right? And then you rely on Emmett Johnson. And when you've got kind of that two-headed monster with Emmett Johnson and TJ this week, yeah, it could create some chaos. I'm excited to see it. Joe, thank you for being part of the Corn Craze Army. I appreciate you. Evan, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, Nebraska 20-17. We always play Penn State tough, no matter how bad we've been in the past. Iowa is the bigger test between our last two, in my opinion. GBR. We're obviously not to Iowa week, Sam, but I tend to agree with this. Iowa knows how to beat Nebraska. Iowa's had their numbers for years. Nebraska obviously beat them a couple years ago with Casey Thompson at quarterback, Trey Palmer. They looked really good that day, but since then they weren't able to rebound. When you go into these games where you know what the outcome's going to be, or you feel like you know what the outcome's going to be, it almost always happens that way. I'd even say last week with Ole Miss and Florida. Florida always has Ole Miss's number. Now, obviously, Ole Miss won that game. They're significantly more superior this week or this year than Florida is. But Florida was still able to cover in that game. They kept it close and they could have won. This week, you got Florida playing Tennessee at home, and I don't think Tennessee's won at Florida in like 20 years or something. So when you're in those situations, you start to think, oh man, I don't know how Nebraska's going to win it. So I'm of the belief that Evan's right. It's going to be really tough for Nebraska to beat Iowa. And if they want to get to 8 wins, this is the one that I feel like is a little bit more likely, even though it's the better team in theory, talent-wise, and it's the team who's got the home field advantage. I don't know what you think about that.
I do think Iowa is a tougher test, especially given that offensively they're similar to Penn State, but they're way better defensively. And I was watching a bit of Iowa USC again today. they did a phenomenal job outside of maybe one play at defending Jaden Mayava's designed runs. So from a defense versus Nebraska's offense and rushing offense standpoint, which is going to be their bread and butter moving forward based on what we saw against UCLA,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a better matchup for Nebraska's opponent than what Penn State has in this game.
Agreed. Another thought I had, I was talking to somebody else about this. Nebraska's played some tough teams this year. They've played USC. They've played Michigan. They've played Cincinnati, who is much better than people anticipated they would be. If you had to rank Nebraska's toughest opponents, just top three, and we're going to include Penn State this week, what would your top three look like?
Are we adjusting for, like, if a certain team plays a different way at home versus on the road, or just in general?
I'd say based on how they played Nebraska, like they were at, like Michigan was at Nebraska. I'll give you mine. I believe Michigan's the toughest team Nebraska's played this year. I think they matched up really well with Nebraska, which made it really tough for Nebraska to win that game. We watched the entire thing. It was a 3-point game, but Michigan looked dominant the entire way through. My number two team in terms of toughness was USC. USC obviously has a lot of talent. They have a really good play caller and a great quarterback. Nebraska still should have won that game, but I'd say they were the second toughest. And my third toughest of the season so far is Cincinnati. Right now, I would put Penn State as fourth behind Cincinnati. Right now, I think Cincinnati played like a bowl caliber game when they played in Kansas City, and they wanted to win that. Nebraska they found a way. So I'd say Penn State's my number four. What's your ranking of this schedule?
Adjusting for all those factors, I'd put Michigan, USC, and then I would probably at this point have Penn State over Cincinnati. But I like what you said about how they played well and Nebraska found a way. That 9.5 line, just that kind of freaks me out.
The 9, you know why the line's 9.5 though, right? The line is 9.5 because people are still not fully, or the books are still not fully bought in on TJ Latif. We saw him against UCLA, who's atrocious. So I understand that part. You also have to factor in that Nebraska would have been a 14.5 point favorite, 14.5 point, or even a 17-point dog had Penn State done what they were supposed to do this year and only been a 1 point or a one-loss team coming into this game, right? So that line has shrunk over a touchdown. Also, one more thing. Sharps have been on Nebraska. The line is down to 8. And that line, I believe, will get down to 7 by kickoff. I mean, I already took it at 8. If you want to get on BroThrow, if anybody does, BroThrow.com, go and type in corn as the promo code, get a $10 free bet. You can get Nebraska at +8, put 50, win 50, no vig. I've given you guys this whole spiel before. It's the place I bet on all my games for straight bets. But anyway, I'm on Nebraska +8. I'm also on Nebraska money line, $50. No, that's a low value. So $50 pays 125 here. It should be 50 pays like 150, I think is what I'm on. But anyway, I agree with you on the line being big and knowing that Nebraska's, facing a bit of a Goliath in terms of talent, but I do think it's too inflated. I think when you look at those teams like we had just talked about, Michigan being the toughest, USC probably being the second toughest, Penn State, let's say they're the third toughest. They're tougher than Cincinnati. Nebraska was still competitive in both those games. Granted, it was at home. Granted, Raiola played in both those games. At least he played in the first half of the USC game. I think Nebraska's good enough to keep this a one-score game all the way through. I think Nebraska's not only good enough, but they're motivated enough. And I think there's a lot to be said for a team who wants it, right? Does Penn State want to be here? Absolutely. But when Nebraska's fans were fully bought in for the Michigan game, when they were fully bought in for the USC game, it shifted the momentum in the game. It shifted the energy in the game. It gave the players a reason to play harder, right? And I promise you as a player, that means something. Penn State won't have that home field advantage with them, right? They won't have that same vibe this week going into the game, because I promise you, Penn State fans aren't talking about this game. They're talking about the future. They're talking about what's next in recruiting, what's next in the portal, which I get. If I'm a Penn State fan, I'd be talking about the exact same things. Nebraska has its fans fully bought in, their coaching staff fully bought in, their players fully bought in. And they not only think they can keep this one close, they believe they can win. And they don't only believe they can win this game. They believe they can win next week at Iowa. They believe they belong in Florida for a bowl game against one of the top SEC teams like a Tennessee or a Vanderbilt or whoever doesn't make it to the playoff, right? So they believe they're still a 10-win caliber team. And I think when you've got that energy and that vibe within a program, especially coming off a bye week, coming off a week where they had an extra 3 or 4 practices to work with TJ, who is obviously new to the fold, could make a really big splash when they're in Happy Valley. So I'm very optimistic for all of those reasons.
I did pick Nebraska to cover at the original 9.5. I don't think that Penn State is going to win by more than a score here if they do, and it's the same thing for Nebraska. I think it's going to be a close game. Yeah, there should be optimism. Nebraska has matchup edges that go their way in the same way that Penn State has matchup edges that go their way.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it, but you're right. Yeah, sharps are on Nebraska. Down from 9.5 to now 7.5 at ESPN Bet.
Yeah, well, there's just no reason to give Nebraska that many points when they've been competitive in every single game, right? The only game they got blown out in was Minnesota, where they were completely underprepared. For whatever reason, they were not focused and they didn't care because that was such an outlier, right? Minnesota sucks. There's no way around it. Minnesota is equivalent to Rutgers. They're equivalent to like Maryland, at least in the second half of the season, Purdue. There's no reason Nebraska should have gotten blown out by them. Okay, flipping back to Penn State. You look at their schedule and what they've done in the last 6 weeks. Northwestern, Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan State, their only win coming to Michigan State, right? And Michigan State, we watched them lose to Nebraska by 11 points. They've been nothing special, and they pretty much sold their season in two. I don't even think they're going to a bowl game. What here tells you Nebraska can't beat these guys? I mean, Nebraska has a very, very good shot. If you look at the past few weeks, right? As much as we are like, oh, well, talent-wise, they're going to match up well. Gosh, I think there's a lot of reason to believe they can win outright. I'm trying to talk myself into taking Nebraska and picking them to win, not just cover, right? Like I've in the last few weeks, I've been saying, well, Nebraska's going to lose by 3 or Nebraska's going to win close. I'm trying to figure out what the path to a win is. And right now, my thoughts on the path to the win is disruption and chaos against their quarterback. Figure out how to make him turn the ball over. It's slow the run game down enough, not that you have to stop it. Like they can run for 150 on Nebraska, and that's not going to be a problem. But they can't run for 250 because they had 2 runs go for 75 yards each, like we saw in the Michigan game, right? Nebraska's got to contain that. And I think if they can contain the big runs and they don't have those breakaway moments like we saw against Michigan, like we saw against Minnesota, they're going to be in it the entire way through. It'll be a back and forth, and Nebraska's not going to be held, and their offense isn't going to be limited. I think it was Dave who said this is an under game, which I would agree with, but I think they're going to be able to get points on the board. And as long as Nebraska can score 21, maybe even 17, they're probably going to be in this one the entire way through.
Free on all counts. I think that Nebraska's secondary has proven itself to be great enough throughout the season where they should be able to sell out against the run and trust their corners and safeties one-on-one with Penn State receivers that really, outside of like occasionally Dante Ross or Trevor Pena, have been absolutely pedestrian.
Yeah.
They really haven't improved from where they were last year. And it's like you give up a long pass. Well, given Grunkmeyer's accuracy and given how the receivers have been, that might just be a fluke. You give up a long run, that probably isn't flukish given, like, against Indiana's run defense, yeah, that was a one-off. But against Nebraska's, you need to sell out to stop that because, like, Katron Allen's really good. Singleton has actually been pretty mediocre this year, but in space, he's still a threat. And their offensive line, I mean, you saw it against Ohio State on a drive or two. It's not elite, but it's also not their problem. Their problems much more so have to do with lack of depth at certain defensive positions, receivers not panning out, quarterback not panning out. The way Nebraska will win is by being in this game for all 4 quarters and not being in it in the way that scoreboard wise it's a 1-score game, but Penn State's dominating. Yep. It's in a way that they are trading blows, like blow for blow, and on film and on the scoreboard and in the box score, it's pretty equal. And they just have to do that and sit and wait. And I think a win would come their way if they go blow for blow because, like you said, Nebraska's fighting for something. I think Nebraska has the coaching edge here. And they also have that clutch edge. They've been
Yep,
able to win one-score games this year in a way that Penn State has just not been able to. I
that's a good
liken this
point.
Penn State team a lot, final thought, to 2021 Nebraska, where they're super talented, they're top 25 in power ratings. They're not really going to be out of a game with rare exception, but they're not clutch at all. So if you trade, their blows with your own and it's pretty equal, I like your chances in the fourth quarter for
Nebraska
sure.
or Penn State's 0-5 in one-score games this year.
That's
Oregon,
insane.
UCLA, Northwestern, Iowa, Indiana.
Iowa's 1 of 4 in close games, or 1-4.
Really?
Yeah, I
That bodes
mean,
well for Nebraska next week, I would think.
yeah. I mean, you could say it's skewed because they played Oregon and Indiana, who are top 3 in FPI, and they got them at home. So they get them on the road. Maybe they're blowouts. But yeah, that was kind of weird to me too, especially since last year I think they were 0-4 in close games.
Yeah, their
Or
only one
no,
score
one and
game,
three.
their only one score win was over Penn State, and Penn State's worse than them in that category, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I didn't think about that. That's something to look forward to when Nebraska plays against Iowa, since Nebraska's finally got that one score thing going for them. They would have beaten USC in the one score game if Raiola wouldn't gotten hurt. Danton says the last time Nebraska won 3 road games was 2011, where they beat Penn State. Great opportunity to do it again. Be freaking awesome. Herbcat says Northwestern over Cincinnati if toughness is the measure. Yeah, Northwestern has gotten better as the season gone on. And Northwestern should have beaten Michigan last week. They very well could have beaten Nebraska was it 3-4 weeks ago. They look a lot better, but they've still got their own issues. I would say Cincinnati is better than Northwestern is right now, just overall. Evan says, are there still a lot of tickets available for the game? I'm not convinced the environment will be that daunting. Yeah, we looked at that, Evan. There are a ton of tickets available. It's not going to be a daunting environment. Nebraska fans won't be there, and Penn State fans won't be there. Penn State students won't be there. So this is not going to be the environment it ever has been. This will be the most chill and calm Penn State game, arguably, that we've seen in like the last 5 years. So, and I think that's easy to say. 84 Cal says, should Nebraska go with Latif or Raiola this year? I think I've talked about this in my opinion on it, but a lot of Nebraska fans are so conflicted on this, Sam. So because you haven't talked about it with us, what are your thoughts on the Latif versus Raiola?
Well, ultimately, the coaches know best. But from my opinion, based on what I would see, I would probably go with Raiola next year. I think that Latif might be better suited in some ways for this offense because its structure is nowhere near where it needs to be. We've seen that with pass protection. And having mobility, if your competitor does not have elite pocket presence, which Raiola does not, can help you outside of structure. But with structure, and I expect Nebraska to improve next year as they've improved every year under Rule. With structure, I think Raiola would be miles ahead of Latif. Just the accuracy, the arm talent, the ability to throw it 40 times per game without your numbers and accuracy falling off a cliff,
Yep.
which, I mean, there's a reason why Latif didn't throw it 20 times against UCLA. Like, they involved him in the offense. He made accurate throws off platform. That was impressive, but it was still mostly the Emmett Johnson show and them containing UCLA. So I think Raiola is the much better quarterback, and with a better supporting cast next year, that should be pretty evident.
Yeah, I think people got so down on Raiola, understandably. And I got down on him too. I was so high on him and I've been so supportive, but watching him do the exact same things every week and take the L's that we watch him take in terms of sacks, in terms of not getting the ball out quick enough and not making improvement on it when he has so many good athletes around him with Emmett Johnson, Isaiah Hunter, Dane Key, Ja'Cory Barney, etc. The list is vast when you talk about Nebraska's playmakers who are around Dylan, who he's supposed to be able to distribute the ball to, right? I've got a little bit down on him, and right now, given the circumstances, I appreciate the fact that they've got a quarterback who can make plays, who I would call Latif more of a playmaker than a distributor. He has to find ways to make the play, whereas Dylan just had to get the ball out to the guy who was going to make it. So I like to see TJ. right now, but I'm on the same page as you. When we get to next season and when they've got an entire offseason to prepare, there is a reason that Dylan is going to be a day one quarterback taken in the NFL draft. Now, you could argue he's not going to be the number one quarterback taken. You could argue he's not going to be the number 2 or 3, but he will probably be a day one quarterback, right? He has the intangibles, he has the build, he has the mental makeup, he has the ties. I mean, this guy is going to be a first round draft pick, and he's going to play and start early for someone in the league. So if you have that opportunity to run with a player like that, and I guess you could say if you're James Franklin, that's what he probably did, right? If you're a Penn State fan, you watched him ride with Drew Aller over Bo Pribula for that exact reason, because he thought that they could rely on Drew Aller's upside. And Nebraska's going to die on that hill next year if it doesn't work, right? So it's an interesting deal. And that's why I think Nebraska fans are so conflicted and why there's so many differing opinions. I think some people just want to see change because they're tired of seeing the same old, which I agree with. And I'm just glad that they were able to see something a little bit different to end the season. And hopefully it's enough of a hiccup to get them one win. If Nebraska gets one more win, it will be such a relief. That 8-4 mark in Rule's third year would be a big deal, not only for Nebraska fans feeling like they achieved something, because last year felt like six wins was, a little bit of an under in terms of what Nebraska fans were hoping for. So if they can get to 8-4 and have that chance in the ninth, it'll make them feel a lot better. And I just think a guy like TJ Latif actually makes it possible. But who knows? We've only seen him play against a UCLA team who's down bad. So it's still early before I make that prediction.
Yeah, and what people have to remember about like the whole Aller versus Pribula conversation, which was happening early on when Aller didn't look good and Pribula looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
Pribula, now that he's, season's mostly over, I don't know if he'll play in the regular season again. His TDINT ratio is 11-7. And as he had to play in the SEC slate and not just the non-conference opponents, he really kind of got exposed. And I think that if Aller had the same receiver talent as Missouri did, because, Missouri has Kevin Coleman Jr. is way better than anyone Penn State has. And if they weren't as mentally messed up in the head the way that they were, like something was just off from the beginning, I think that Aller's season may have gone differently. And I think that there's, I know Penn State failed. I know Franklin failed. But Aller is like the better quarterback than Pribula. Now, he's not better for every system, and he probably wasn't better for Kotelnicki's system. But with Dana Holgerson, I'd imagine with them wanting to utilize receiver and having good receivers, and they know they need to improve on the offensive line, that you'll see a good structure next year. And I think within structure, Raiola will be so much better as a quarterback, and it will be evident that he is Nebraska's QB1. I mean, this year he had to try to sometimes carry the team on his back, sometimes because of the mistakes he made, but also because the defense and offensive line wasn't where it might be at right now. And him having to throw it 30 plus times a game at times is impressive. And we just haven't seen Latif do that yet.
No, and I don't think we're going to. Evan made a good comment. He says, unfortunately, a lot of Nebraska influencers have been spreading rumors about Dylan transferring and not giving him the credit he deserves for kickstarting our comeback. I will tell you this, Evan. I don't watch a lot of content around Nebraska because I typically make my own content. So I don't have enough time to watch other content. But a lot of people who make content that is super controversial, typically they're looking for clicks, right? We all know there are YouTubers who go out there and put these clickbaity deals, and they're like, oh, just heard X about this recruit, or just heard X about this player. Here's some breaking thing that no one else has talked about, because it's a way to get subscribers. It's a way to get views, a way to get clicks, ultimately a way to make money. I have never done that on my channel. The only time I've put quote unquote clickbait material out has been when I have factual data behind it. And I've been right when I do put that data out or that information out. By the way, a good example is when I said Dylan's going to be Nebraska's quarterback, like 20 minutes after, or 20 minutes before it actually was starting to look like it was going to be a real thing. So my point in saying all that is there will always be a bunch of misinformation, a bunch of sensationalized information, a bunch of clickbaity content out there, and you just got to kind of ignore it, right? Because people are looking for views. They're looking for ways to get people to watch their content. It's a hard world out here, and if you don't have something that's really gripping, it's hard to get people to jump in, so I get it, but yeah, I don't even pay attention. I think most people who have common sense are of the belief that you and I are, Dylan did lead this kind of surge at Nebraska over these last 2 seasons. He is going to get a lot of credit for this rebuild when Nebraska is back to that 10 or 11 win season, even though he might not be here to see it. Right. So I'm giving him his flowers. I think a lot of other Nebraska fans will as well. It's not just him, it's the guys he was able to bring in to play with him. And a lot of the guys who are here want to play with Dylan. And Isaiah Hunter did not transfer to Nebraska to play with TJ Latif. Dane Key did not transfer to Nebraska to play with TJ Latif. With TJ Latif. No disrespect to him, but I think he is a key piece. He's going to continue to be, and most people are going to realize that, even though there are going to be trolls or people who are looking to just stir the pot. So that's my thought there. Another thing, Sam. Nebraska wins this game, let's say, and then they lose to Iowa. If they go to a bowl game and they're playing like a Tennessee, what's your thought on Nebraska being competitive in a bowl game against an SEC team, knowing that they've been average against the better schools they've played? Michigan, I wouldn't even say USC they were average. They played really well against USC. But let's say, let's say they get to 8-4 and they go and play a good team. What's the outlook for you? Is Nebraska going to be competitive against a really good team who's borderline playoff worthy? Or is Nebraska still a bit of ways from being competitive in games like that?
I mean, given how Michigan and USC are borderline playoff, and
Yeah.
one of them might make it,
Mm-hmm.
like I would say they can be competitive. I mean, I don't think Tennessee's all that much better than Nebraska. I don't think Missouri is. Um, I
I
mean,
absolutely don't think Missouri is.
yeah, I like Vanderbilt a little bit. Like Texas and Oklahoma are certainly more talented. I mean, same thing with Alabama if they miss. Ole Miss, A&M, and probably Georgia are shoo-ins at this point.
Yep.
But they could compete in a bowl game with, I would say almost any team they play. And I think the reason behind that is to them, bowl appearances mean something. And to a lot of the SEC programs they'd be playing, I don't think they would mean all that much.
So that's what I wanted to get out of you. So I think when Nebraska goes to their bowl game, we aren't going to see any opt-outs. Now, you might have a couple, two, but you're not going to see very many. And remember, most of Nebraska's roster is young, so guys are coming back, which means why would they opt out? That's one thing that makes me excited. When you go and play against some of these SEC teams, you're going to have more opt-outs because they have more NFL talent and more senior guys as well. And like you said, doesn't mean as much. They're used to playing in the biggest moments, and this might not be one of those big moments that they would hope for. So I agree with you. I think Nebraska's bowl outlook is extremely positive. I'm just excited to see which one they make it to. It'll be fun. Work Harder says, is Dylan R going to be NFL material? So I've had this argument with people. Like, they try and say, well, no, he hasn't looked that great, so he's going to be a second or third round pick. No, it's not how it works. The NFL guys do not pick quarterbacks based on their college success. Go and look at what was his name? Anthony Richardson a couple years ago at Florida. He was not a very good quarterback at Florida. He didn't do shit. He didn't look very good. And the reason that he got picked in the very top of that draft is because of his intangibles, his mental makeup, what they thought they could build him into. And Dylan is all of that and more. Dylan is going to be a top pick, no matter how his career at Nebraska finishes. So people will try to sell you on this idea that no, he needs to come back or this or that. Dylan is likely gone after next year, no matter what, because he's going to get that first round grade that he expects, and he'll go from there. So that's my thought. Another thing that was interesting, people were talking about, I don't really think too much into it or care much about it, Sam, but Dayton decommitted yesterday. He's not going to come to Nebraska. And I thought that made sense, right? You've got Dylan, who's going to be the starter next year. TJ, who's right after him. Dayton would be the third string, but behind him is Trey Taylor, and Trey Taylor seems to be a bit more talented than Dayton is and would likely win that quarterback competition if you base it off talent or I guess high school and how they played in high school. I didn't think too much into it. Did you see that? Did you even think about it? I mean, that's obviously in the weeds as a Nebraska fan, so it's not something you would care as much about, but I know you see people talking about this stuff.
Oh, I saw it and even saw people talking about it, and I just kind of thought to myself, like, I'm not going to believe that Raiola's leaving until it's announced by multiple sources that Raiola is expected to enter the transfer portal, because for the same reasons you said, Taylor is much more talented than
Yeah.
he is. Dayton, not Dylan. And I mean, heck, maybe Taylor will end up being more talented than Raiola. I don't know. You never know these days. And he probably is already better than him right now, despite being a year younger, not just
Yeah.
more talented. And then with how good Latif has looked, you're coming in to be QB3 and you could very easily be QB4. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yep. I agree with you. So you're not concerned about Dylan Raiola transferring, is your point?
No. And if he does transfer, I think that would say more about TJ Latif than him,
Agreed.
probably.
Yeah, there's no world where Dylan transfers, in my opinion. So I'm not worried about that. Danton says, do you think Dayton leaving gives more security that TJ will stay? I don't think that changes anything for TJ. I think TJ's whole deal was, or is, what's my outlook at Nebraska? And he's going to have to say, okay, Dylan Raiola comes back next year, which means I'm going to be the backup. Fine. There's a chance I could start some games if he gets injured, but in theory, I'm the backup. So as long as he's willing to take whatever money Nebraska's offering him, be the backup for 1 year, and have confidence that he is going to win the job after Dylan leaves against what will be a true freshman in Trey Taylor. I mean, I don't think it changes TJ's outlook. I just think it may secure it a little bit more because he knows he doesn't have any pressure from other quarterbacks. Nebraska's not taking a 26 QB, which means he's the clear front runner to start in 27. I think it's going to come down to money, and I think it's going to come down to how well TJ plays in these last two games. If TJ goes off, he wins the last two and wins the bowl game, and he can throw the ball, he is going to be a very, very hot commodity in the portal. And it's going to be really hard for Nebraska to keep him, no matter how much money they offer him. I think the odds of that happening are extremely slim. I think Nebraska's best chance is going 2-1 over this stretch. Most likely chance is going 1-2 over this stretch, right? They're going to be dogs in the next two games, and they'll likely be a dog. It depends what bowl game they play in. If they play in like the Las Vegas Bowl against Arizona or Arizona State, there's a good chance they're the favorite. But if they're in a better bowl game, they'll be the dog. Anyway, my point in saying all this is I think a lot of what's going to happen with TJ has to do with how he plays in these next couple of games. And Nebraska's already committed to keeping him here. They do not want to lose their quarterback of the future over money, especially when they have money to spend. And they don't want to lose their security if they were to lose Dylan again, because after a quarterback gets injured once, the likelihood goes up. So yeah, they got to make sure they keep him. And I think they're going to. I just hope that TJ isn't too good to where Nebraska's now got this issue on their hand where there's a chance they would leave. Brad says, what other offers does Dayton have? He shut down his recruitment pretty early. He doesn't really have other offers. I think he's got like Charlotte and somebody else who's weak, but he had a really good senior season. I always see highlights of him. So now that he's back open, I'm sure that coaches are going to be calling him and he's going to get some offers from like Power 4 schools. Like right now, yeah, Splurge says Charlotte and App State, but his offers will change, I'm sure. He's had a good season. And now that his recruitment's open, he's not a lock to Nebraska. It makes sense. Anyway, Sam, I want to move over to games this week that are going on in the Big Ten. Get your thoughts. So Rutgers plays Ohio State. Rutgers fighting for a bowl eligibility in that game, but I'm thinking that's a blowout.
Yep.
You think they cover 32.5? It's a lot of points.
It is a lot of points, but like Rutgers defense is so bad that I don't feel safe. Like even though Ohio State's top two receivers will be opting out, like Ohio State's rushing attack is bad, but Rutgers' rushing defense is even worse. So I could see Ohio State running for like a few big explosive plays and even maybe getting a defensive touchdown or something.
Okay,
so I don't know what to pick for the spread.
We'll ignore it because it's just too big of a spread. Northwestern Minnesota. It's at Wrigley Field. Minnesota sucks. Northwestern's getting better as it goes on. They're fighting for bowl eligibility. They're a 3.5-point favorite, and the total's 39.5. That's a crazy hook right there. That 0.5 really gets you, right? Because this is most likely a 3-point win for one of these teams. I personally am taking Northwestern. I think they're bitter about last week's loss. They should have won that game. I think the crowd energy was fantastic at Wrigley Field. It'll be different this week since it's Minnesota and not Michigan, but I still think that's a great stadium for them. It's a great setting. I think Northwestern's going to win this week, and I think they're going to cover.
I am in lock agreement. Minnesota is awful. Northwestern was able to play Michigan that competitively, and yes, part of that was Michigan, but Michigan, if you look at the advanced stats, outside of the turnovers, really dominated. So it's
Mhm.
also a credit to Northwestern that they were able to take advantage of things and stay in it. So I think they're well coached. They're physical. They can run. Minnesota, for whatever reason, can't. I like them to go bowling here with that win.
I love it. Okay. USC plays Oregon. That's a 1:30 game for me. So my Saturday plans, pretty simple. Waking up and watching football at my apartment. Afternoon game comes on at 1:30. One of my best friends who lives out here is a big USC fan. I obviously appreciate USC football. So we're going to go down to the bars and we're going to watch this game together. Then after this game, I'm already going to be at the bars. I'm going to head over to Whiskey Row, which is the Nebraska bar in Old Town Scottsdale. And I'm going to watch the Nebraska game with a bunch of other Nebraska fans. And then we get to the end of the fourth quarter. I'll hop in my car, drive home about 8 minutes, and I'll be ready for my live stream. So that's my game plan for
Awesome.
Saturday. So my two big games that I'm watching are this one and then Nebraska. So I'm excited to watch USC and Oregon because it means a lot. It's a playoff game, essentially. It's a historic rivalry from the Pac-12, right? And these are two teams who have been playing really well as of the last 3 weeks. So 10.5 points seems like a lot. I tend to think that USC is going to be competitive in this game. And even if they lose by 10, I get that half point, right? So what's your thought here? Do you think it's going to be as high scoring? Yeah, what's up? Oregon looked really good last week, but they played against a really shit team. What's the deal?
I am so scared because whether it's you or a few other intelligent people I've talked to who know what they're doing, a lot of people that I respect think that USC is going to make this competitive, and I, I I don't. I love Oregon here. I think that Oregon has key matchup edges where they can run the football well and stop the run, and their secondary I think is legit. And I know that Indiana was able to pass in them a little bit, but people also forget that Oregon forced several punts. They got the pick six. Mendoza's just a better quarterback than Jaden Maiava, though his receivers top two aren't as talented. And Indiana has a defense, and USC's is it's improving, and I love the direction they're going in, but I just don't think they're there yet. And USC's points per play margin is about zero. It's like
Really?
0.008
I had
on
no
the
idea.
road. Their road points per play margin is basically even, and Oregon's is one of the best at home. And Maava also has a 1-to-1 TDINT ratio on the road. So
Okay.
I'm all in on Oregon here.
That's the
Don't
thing.
know if that's proper.
USC on the road has not looked good this year. I was looking at something on X the other day and it showed the road versus the home. Here it is. I just got it. So it's USC's home to road splits are wild. Most teams tend to play better at home, but these are way different. USC's 4 road games: Purdue, Illinois, Notre Dame, and Nebraska. Points per game: 45 at home, 27.5 away. Points allowed at home: 19 away, 25.5. Yards per play. Look at that. Just everything. Completion percentage, third down offense, third down defense. I mean, literally every category. So, yeah, I
One
agree
more
with you.
thing, can I interject real quick?
Of course you
Just
can.
real quick. You'll love this because you're a betting guy. I do not yet, I'm not getting into that space yet, but one day I probably will. Lincoln Riley, outside of the state of California, is winless against the spread. So are they really going to earn their first ATS win against this Oregon team?
But
That's
when
where
you
I'm going to
say
leave
it
it at.
like that, you're putting a lot of respect on Oregon. I don't have the amount of respect for Oregon that other people do. I think that's the issue.
That's fair.
I think I saw Oregon in a better light before the season started, and now I'm like, Oregon hasn't impressed me as much as I thought they would. But yeah, I think it's a very tricky one. I think it's tricky. We don't know if USC's for real yet. I think a lot of people are like, well, USC's for real. They beat Nebraska on the road. Well, they didn't beat Nebraska on the road. They beat Nebraska without their quarterback on the road, and they would have lost
Yes.
that game with the quarterback. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's a very tricky spot. Moss, thank you for being here. No, I'm not blocking you. You thought I was stronger. No, I don't block you. I actually allow you to say whatever you want. Your retarded comments actually give me life. And I really like the energy in the chat when you come in and people shoot down the stupid things you say. So nope, you're not blocked. You can say whatever you want. You only get banned by the moderators when you go too spammy. Not you, but anyone who's too spammy in the chat. That's when they get blocked or put on timeout. I don't have anything to do with that. I'm busy talking to Sam and monitoring the stream. I don't really worry about the chat. But thank you for being here, Moss. Big Nebraska fan you are. I appreciate you supporting the channel as always. Okay, next is Michigan State and Iowa. Michigan State getting 16.5 points. I kind of like Iowa. I don't know. Is this too many points for Iowa, or are they going to go back to their ways of scoring 40 for no reason on these lower tier Big Ten teams?
I picked Iowa to win and cover, so I'm in agreement with you there. It
Okay.
just Michigan State's a corpse.
Yeah, they're done. Michigan State's done. I don't know what's going to happen with their coach. Is there any like smoke around him getting fired, or what's the deal?
There's actually smoke around him coming back in the same way that Fickle and Loxley are.
Interesting. All right. How about Michigan, Maryland? Speaking of Loxley, Michigan's a 13.5 point favorite. Maryland technically fighting for bowl eligibility.
I think Maryland covers, but I also think at some point Michigan being as loose with the football as they are will get corrected in some way. So I like Michigan to win, but Maryland to cover.
What's crazy about Maryland, you look at their record here, right? Like they had that win over Wisconsin. They kept it close with Washington, kept it close with Nebraska, kept it close with UCLA. Then they just fell off. And I had a lot of respect for them. I thought, man, this is going to be a good team. They're going to for sure make a bowl game. And it just nothing worked for them after they had that win against Wisconsin. What's the take on Maryland for you?
Oh, I overreacted to their win over Wisconsin preseason. I thought they'd be an awful football team because they lost a lot of their good players in the portal. And my problem was I thought Wisconsin would be better than they were. So when they beat
Yeah.
Wisconsin, I was really impressed. They have really good freshmen, but that's basically it. They basically got Zahir Mathis, Sidney Stewart, their two pass rushers. And then they have, I think Daniel Wingate is a good linebacker for them. They have a good defensive front and a good developmental QB in Malik Washington, who would be great if he had a better supporting cast.
Pause. Will
They
he be the
just
quarterback at Maryland next year or not?
Loxley, it's already been confirmed that he's staying and they're going to invest more in NIL. So yes, I think he
Okay.
will be.
Okay.
They're just not well coached and they're not deep. I mean, it's like it's what Maryland was even when they had Talia. Just because of NIL and Loxley, I think mishandling things, they've just kind of fallen off from there.
You know, Talia was not as good as what this new quarterback is. Malik Washington looks really freaking good. Talia was okay, but not like Malik Washington. And we saw Talia at his senior season. Like he was, I don't know, he was okay. He was good for Maryland, but he wasn't like an electric Big Ten quarterback. That's my
Yeah.
thought. Okay, Illinois plays at Wisconsin, 8.5 point favorite. Wisconsin's been competitive every week, and they're at home. I don't know. I feel like they're going to be competitive, right?
I mean, they should sack Altmaier 10 times, but if they can't put together a sustainable drive, that may
Yeah,
not matter.
fair. I
That's
don't know
kind
what
of
to
what
think.
Nebraska or Wisconsin does. They sack you. They're really frustrating to play on defense, but they can't do anything offensively.
I think I'm just going to stay off this one. How about Washington at UCLA? Late night game.
That's a trap spot given the Oregon game for
I
Washington.
Do you think it's a take the points? UCLA's playing their backup quarterback again, right? Or is Nico back? Nico's back.
I
He was
have
on concussion, so it was just 1 week.
If Nico's back, I would take UCLA to
UCLA.
cover.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I take UCLA. Okay, other top 25 games. OU plays Missouri. Missouri feels a bit one-dimensional right now, but OU is in a funny spot because they're in a must-win to make the playoff now. And they're off of a huge win on the road. This is a 10 a.m. game. It's 7.5 points. I think I'm taking Missouri, and I think it's going to be a closer one. I think OU is going to win, but not by more than a touchdown.
It sounds like Bo Prabula might actually play, and if he does, I actually would like Missouri to not just cover, but possibly win outright. In my video, I picked Oklahoma to win and cover, but I didn't know yet that Prabula might play. That would be a game changer if he did.
Absolutely. Okay. Arkansas is at Texas. Another one. Texas is in a must-win scenario if they want a chance at the playoff, and they believe they do have a chance. So Texas needs to win this week against Arkansas. They just lost on the road to Georgia, and then they have Texas A&M on deck. Texas A&M, obviously a top 3 team nationally. I kind of like Arkansas with the points. As bad as Arkansas is, they keep games close. What happened last week? They lost by 1 to LSU. Should have won that game. I look at every week. Almost beat Tennessee. Almost beat A&M. Kept it close with Auburn. Too many turnovers. Almost beat Mississippi State. Almost beat LSU. Texas and Arkansas is a bit of a rivalry historically. So, and they recruit from the same area. I think I got to take the points. Take the points and expect Texas to be a little bit beat up from last week and a little bit in a look ahead spot for Texas A&M.
That's exactly what I would do. I think Arkansas is pretty safe to cover.
Okay. Um, how about Houston TCU? Do you know anything about these two teams? Because I've been betting on TCU this year. I liked how they looked in the beginning of the season against North Carolina, but then we realized North Carolina wasn't very good. Houston started off super hot. They obviously went on the road at Arizona State, which got them into the top 25. Now they're a 1.5-point favorite at home when they've looked a lot better this year than TCU. Their quarterback's Connor Wegman. I think this is a tough pick. I'm taking Houston out of principle because I freaking hate TCU. They never cover for me, but I don't know. It's a toss-up game to me.
Based on the limited things I know and listening to the Cover 3 podcast to think about how it looked like TCU may have quit against BYU, I'd probably lean Houston here.
Okay. Georgia Tech is hosting Pitt. Georgia Tech's a 2.5-point favorite. I'm in an interesting spot here because I have a future on Georgia Tech to win the ACC. 300 pays 600. So I don't want to be too strung out and put another unit on GT this week, although I do think they're going to cover, and then lose 500 just because they lose this game. Because if they do lose this game, they're not going to the ACC championship. So I might put a half unit on, but I'm like, I don't know what to do. Georgia Tech, I like them. I just don't know what to think. Did you watch Pitt and Notre Dame last week?
I got enough clips to see that Pitt absolutely got destroyed.
They can't stop the run.
No, they that was a bit of a paper tiger stat. I initially
What's a paper tiger stat?
Statistically, they're good against the run. Pittsburgh is,
Oh,
but then that completely fell apart because Notre Dame actually is an elite rushing attack. I originally picked Pitt and then thankfully switched my pick to Notre Dame. The only reason Pitt scored double digits is because CJ Carr threw 2 bad interceptions. I think that Georgia Tech will probably win it in a close one because that's what they do. And Pittsburgh in general can't run while Haynes King has stayed healthy and Georgia Tech's just willing to let him run it like 20 times or however much he needs to win.
yeah, this is a really, really important game for Georgia Tech. And I tend to believe that last week, although they almost did lose to Boston College, they found a way to win on the road. And that was a look ahead spot because Pitt was ranked in the top 25 last week before that Notre Dame game. You got home field advantage for Georgia Tech. It is another look ahead spot with Georgia on deck, but they don't need to worry about the Georgia game. Win this game against Pitt, win the ACC championship, and they're in the playoff, even with a loss to Georgia. So I think this game they're going to go all in for, and I'm going to take Georgia Tech to cover. I'm just going to put another unit on it. Screw it. I believe. I don't like Pitt. Yeah, we're going Georgia Tech. Okay. Florida, Tennessee. It's at Florida. It's at night. Obviously, they've mailed the season in, but Florida was competitive against Ole Miss on the road last week. Tennessee, they haven't been as good as they looked like they were going to be this year when they almost beat Georgia at home. I took Florida +4.
I would take Florida here too. Tennessee cannot win in the swamp, and Florida showed enough light and fight in them against Ole Miss to where, with this being a rivalry game, and Napier didn't use the portal all that much, so it's a very like homegrown Florida roster. A lot of the players have been there for a long time.
Yep.
I think they're going to want to show up here.
I like it. Okay, we're on the same page on almost all these games. BYU's at Cincy, late night game. Cincy fell out of the top 25. They're still technically alive for the Big 12 Big 12 championship game. They need to win out, which means they need to beat BYU, and then they need to beat. Is it Kansas they play? Let me check really quick. I believe their last game is TCU, which I think they can beat TCU. TCU's been underwhelming, so they're 2 games away from having a chance to make it to the Big 12 championship. They're a 2.5-point dog at home. BYU's been really good this year. I hate picking against BYU. I don't even know if I can put money on this game because BYU's been burning me every single week. What are your thoughts on BYU and Cincy?
I like Cincy here. I think that Cincinnati is live. I think that they probably lost to Arizona last week because they were looking forward to this game. Cincinnati's defense isn't good, but their offense certainly is. And BYU has been a little bit better at home than on the road. Part of that's competition. Part of that's just who they are. They're a well-coached team that knows how to win close games, but I think I think there's a reason the line's at 2.5 here.
Fair.
Cincinnati, I think, is live. I don't know if they will win because BYU has the better coaching staff and is the better team, but it's a tough spot for BYU. And I think that Cincinnati has some, offense and rushing offense to make this interesting.
Okay. I don't know if I can take them, but I do agree with your logic. Last one is Arizona State at Colorado. Jeff Sims, revenge. Getting to go back to Colorado where he got destroyed as Nebraska's quarterback in 2023. Obviously, I was at that game. It was a very depressing scene. What are your thoughts on this game? And I'm going to ask you a question about the quarterback situation because Money Line wants to know.
So Colorado sucks. So I think that Arizona State will win that game. This is like Sanders. It might be worse than the 2023 team like that he had. That team was bad. As for the whole Sam Leavitt thing, with his injury, his draft stock fell. It was already falling after it. Like people were talking about him possibly being even round 1, pick 1 this year. There was some conversation about that. That evaporated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He does lose Jordan Tyson, his wide receiver 1, who probably will be a first-round pick. So I don't exactly know. I mean, he's also the quarterback that left Michigan State for ASU out of almost personal spite for the staff. So from my perspective, I don't know him, so I don't want to speak too much ill, but it sounds like he's someone who is mostly, if not exclusively, out for him. And from that angle, yeah, you should probably go to a better school and better roster and face better defenses than what Arizona State is and what they're doing in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I think Arizona State's going to lose a lot of players next year because they've got a bunch of guys who came in for Kenny Dillingham. Dillingham, I think, is going to be out of there. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he'll get a really big offer from one of these schools after a guy like Lane Kiffin denies LSU, and then you've got to go to the second tier coaches, and Dillingham's one of them. So I think they could lose a bunch of their guys, and then what's Leavitt going to do? He'll be the one guy who stays back. It doesn't seem like it would make much sense to me. So I'm sure he'll be gone, and I think it's pending coaching decision and then pending what they're able to do in the transfer portal because they're going to lose some guys like their number 1 receiver, Jordan Tyson, and then what's next for them? What's next for Sam Leavitt? So you and I are in agreement. Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this Penn State game and the rest of the Big Ten with me. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Nebraska can do. I'm optimistic. I just don't know. I have a really hard time picking them to win games when they're big dogs because I haven't seen that happen in a long time. Like, when's the last time Nebraska won a game as an 8.5 point dog? They've been competitive, though. And I think that's the one thing that you can say is a positive. They went to Ohio State last year. Could have won the game. Lost by 4, I think. I don't even remember what their other ones were where they were big dogs off the top of my head, but you get my point. So yeah. I'm optimistic. What's your score prediction?
I don't have a score prediction off the top of my head, but while I'm thinking of one, I did pick Penn State to win, Nebraska to cover. So I will go with Penn State winning. I'll go 31-27.
31-27?
Yeah, I think that both defenses can be exploited by both of these offenses and what they can and want to do.
I don't think we're going to see that many points scored. I think it's going to be like a 24-21 game. I'm going to take Nebraska. I just think that they have a lot of fire and energy coming off the bye week. They really want to win. I know Penn State's motivated as well, but for this to be a Penn State home game and be as low energy as it is, I think it's a really good opportunity for Nebraska to go in, play spoiler. I'm going to take them to win 24-21 and just pray it happens. But Sam, I appreciate you coming on. I'll talk to you later. And yeah, I love your new backdrop. Looks great. Can't wait to watch one of your shows with it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's always a blast to come on here, and cheers to future shows with you.
All right.
Thanks
I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
Make sure you guys subscribe to Sam's channel. You guys know too, since you've seen him on here a bunch of times before. I love it when guys work hard and try and build their brand, and he's done a really good job at it. You know, he hasn't seen a lot of money from it because when you're doing YouTube, you don't make a lot up front. You've got to really build the fan base to get to the point where you can monetize your views. And then where you can get sponsors. And it's just a long process, especially as a young guy who's, Sam has never seen money before. So he's just trying to figure it out. It's easier to go work a job, but this is his passion. So anyway, my point in all of that is go watch his videos, support his channel, do whatever you can do to make sure he feels the love from the Corn Craze Army, because he comes on here and gives us a lot of good insight whenever I ask him to. There was a comment on here I wanted to respond to. Moneyline says, you and 0 to 60 should do a collab and just talk about football. Okay, I don't know what 0 to 60 is, but I'll take a picture and I'll look up 0 to 60 after this stream. No One Important says, is it a hot take that I think Lane Kiffin will stay at Ole Miss? I don't think so. I think it's actually starting to be a reality that he could stay at Ole Miss. I think it's more of a 50-50 than anything right now. And it could go either way, whether he ends up at LSU or whether he stays at Ole Miss. And I would not be surprised, based on all of the comments we've seen, with him going on Pat McAfee yesterday, with him doing his little snippets on Twitter, if he was doing all of this to build up the brand at Ole Miss right now, and then to basically shut down all of these other big name schools, shut down the $15 million a year offer from LSU, and then be able to say, wow, Ole Miss is the best spot for me. This is where all the recruits need to come. You've all had your eyes and ears all around Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin for these last few weeks, and I decided to stay at Ole Miss. Get your ass here if you want to win a championship. I would not be surprised if that's the game he's playing. I also wouldn't be surprised if he up and left and went to LSU, so doesn't say much about that. But we'll have to see. It's an exciting time in college football because you have so many storylines. You have so much drama. And as we get closer to portal season approaching, we're going to see a lot of that with Nebraska. So although this is, 2 weeks out, we've got, one game literally in 2 weeks. And then we've got about a month before the last game of the season. And then we're back to a long off season. So I'm just appreciating our time. And I'm appreciating that we can go live together as often as we have, usually 3 days a week. And I thank you guys for being here to support me all season. And I can't wait to hopefully celebrate a win after this Penn State game on Saturday. So I hope to see you then. Thank you for being here tonight. And until next time, go Big Red.